Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us for a return visit, Mr. Kidder is back, the co-CEO and president of the SouthCoast Chamber of Commerce in New Bedford here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jim, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your viewers.
It is this is, I think, the third year now we've done this sort of holiday get-together. I was looking at last year's show. And while there are still so many similarities, there's a lot of differences too.
There are.
Let's start from your perspective here. You've come in time to time talking about where business stands in relation to the pandemic. Right. So I'll ask you that question again. As we start the holiday season, where do businesses stand?
Right now, I think, Jim, there's some good news. I think the good news is that businesses are actually starting to hum up again. The manufacturing sector is doing well. Obviously, our fishing base industries are doing well. Some of our small businesses are challenged, but they're profitable. The biggest challenge we have now is making sure that we can get staffed up to be able to meet the demand and also to deal with some of the supply chain issues, because that will keep a profitable enterprise from being much more profitable if it can possibly get the equipment and tools that it needs and parts.
As I was looking at the show, and we were talking about this off air, I watched it last year, and I'm sitting here thinking, we didn't really talk about staffing. We did talk about staffing, but it didn't seem an issue that it appears to be now.
Right.
And I'm wondering, are businesses optimistic they'll be able to provide the services that are needed over the next 5-6 weeks? And I would say that holiday season probably takes place even a couple weeks after New Year's because of gift cards and the like.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest challenge that from last year to this year is that last year companies were dealing with how are we going to keep our doors open with fewer people because we can't afford them right now.
Right.
And so the unemployment rolls were growing, and they were growing on an almost seemingly an exponential basis. What we're seeing now is that these companies want to staff up, but they don't have the available workforce coming back to those businesses to be able to staff up and meet the demand that the economy is asking them to meet. I mean, you and I, and again, we talked about this a little bit off air. I'm in the process of renovating my house because of a water accident. Well, it's wonderful to be able to do that, and I'm excited about what the outcome is going to be. But the first thing I did when I went into a plumbing store in New Bedford to get fixtures and whatnot was ask the question, what do you have in stock? Because that's what I'm going to buy, because there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to get stuff to us. Now the workforce hasn't necessarily all come back to work, even though the demand is there. So it's something that is a bit of a mystery. And we're kind of looking forward now to the point where we get past this new normal into what used to be the old normal, where folks are back to work and they're able to actually meet the demand that's in front of them.
You talk to a lot of people, businesses and people. What are some of the challenges, I guess, that potential employees are facing? I mean, I hear childcare is a huge issue right now.
Childcare is a gigantic issue. When you start looking at the challenges in front of people, number one, COVID itself and fear of COVID is still out there. This pandemic is not over, and you and I have talked about this at some length. We didn't think 18 months down the road we would still be having conversations about the effects of the pandemic on the workforce now. Secondly, childcare is a gigantic problem. And it's compounded by, if you look at some of our childcare providers, they're having trouble staffing up.
All right.
So even if they could go back to 100% capacity, which now they can, even if they could get back to 100% capacity, they don't have the workforce to be able to service and provide service to those families. So that is a huge, huge issue.
In my understanding, nationwide, I don't know about, you might know better here in the New Bedford, but my understanding nationwide, childcare is closed and haven't reopened because the pandemic just eliminated their business.
That's exactly right. You know, it's one of the reasons why it's been kind of a signature issue for us. It doesn't sound like it's a business issue to say we're a Chamber of Commerce that's working hard towards improvements in early childhood care and early childhood education. But for us, that's our workforce. Their parents are their workforce when our children, and the children are our future workforce. So childcare issues are extremely important to us, and they do keep primarily women out of the workforce. And women have not returned to the workforce the way men have returned to the workforce. So we now find ourselves with a real imbalance, and that imbalance is actually mostly childcare related.
And it's really obviously been exacerbated by the pandemic, because the track was not like that prior to the pandemic.
No, we've actually created a whole new set of curves. And when you start looking at employment data and you start looking at where the challenges are lying, getting women back into the workforce is one of the biggest challenges, because many have dropped out of the workforce, some of them on a permanent basis. Many people who were close to retirement have said, I don't need to put up with this anymore, and they are actually opting for early retirement. So the workforce is actually shrinking at both ends. It's shrinking in young workers, and it's shrinking in older workers. And that's a challenge that until we master, we're never going to have this economy running at full tilt.
A lot of businesses are offering incentives to
Yes.
get people to come to work for
Yes.
them. Have they been working?
To a very large degree, I'm sad to say no. Many have tried everything from bonuses to their current workforce to bring in their friends and family to come and work for them and provide a bonus for the worker coming in as well, because they don't want to treat their workforce who is stuck with them. Mm-hmm. They don't want to treat them worse than they treat somebody new coming in. Others have tried everything from bonuses that are stepped. So if you're here for 3 months, you get X number of dollars. 6 months, X number of dollars. If you're here for a year, you get the big bonus. That hasn't necessarily worked either. So the challenge that the workforce is having is, or the employers are having, is getting the workforce to say yes. Because right now we are in a record period of relatively high unemployment and high job openings at the same time. And those are two curves that we rarely see at the same time.
And it's interesting too, you talked about manufacturing right at the start. You talked about that the manufacturing industry is starting to rev up again. I think for a lot of people it's noticeable about staffing issues when you're, for lack of a better word, in a service industry,
Right.
Whatever it is.
Right.
How is it with manufacturing though?
Manufacturing is running into the same problems.
Okay.
I do not know a single manufacturer, and I was speaking with one this morning up in the industrial park. They are crying for people. They have a sophisticated HR operation. They have a wonderful incentives program for their own workforce, and they're having a really, really hard time staffing up. They want to do a third shift. They can't do it.
Is it specialization an issue too, that potential employees don't have the necessary skills to do a job?
That is a piece of the problem. Although I don't know a single business right now that isn't in the education business.
Okay.
Every single business is in the workforce training business, and they're taking advantage of the workforce training funds. They're taking advantage. I'm fortunate to be vice chair of the Greater New Bedford Mass Hire Workforce Board. And there are dollars coming into that system, the likes of which we haven't seen for a long time, to train people and to staff them up and to pay them to get to learn so that they can hit the ground running. But every business is training now, every single one.
So if you are a potential employee, I should say, you want job X, you look at your resume, you don't have the skill set, you at least have the desire. More often than not, you feel that a potential employer will say, we're going to take a chance on you?
Yes, I think that's exactly what I'm saying, in ways that hadn't been the case before. Normally, you had to have a skill set that matched the job that was needed. Now, you need to have a willingness to work, willingness to learn, because it does require new skills, a willingness to learn new skills, and they will pay you to do it. And that's something that actually, in the long term, could lead to higher wages for people, could lead to a better job opportunities than they otherwise would have had. This is a time to be a job seeker, because the flexibility that businesses are showing in order to try to meet their needs are beyond what we've ever seen before. And it's because they want to get staffed up.
We were talking with Rick Kidder from One SouthCoast Chamber of Commerce. The holiday shopping season is here, so we wanted to bring Rick in to as he is now for like the third year to talk about this, but it's certainly, like we have been talking about, a difficult time for businesses. The retail industry right now, you and I have said this is where for a number of businesses, this is almost, this next 6 weeks or so is like half their seasonal, half their annual income.
Right.
And I guess a manufacturer is a little different. So what are the retailers doing to try to, get those employees in here? I know usually Christmas, businesses will hire people for 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
Are they, obviously they're still doing that.
They're still trying to do that. And one of the things that you're seeing, you are seeing in virtually every major retailer, you're seeing help wanted signs everywhere. They are looking to staff up, and they're looking to meet the holiday demand. Our smaller retailers, I'm glad to say most of the ones with whom I've spoken have been able to hold on to their longtime employees. Part of that is a kind of personal loyalty to the people with whom they're working. They wouldn't be working there if they didn't like it. And these smaller operations, whether it's Calico in downtown New Bedford, or whether it's a small taco shop on Purchase Street, those folks have a loyal cadre of employees who have stuck with them. Why? Because they were able to stick with them when this pandemic hit. And even though they had to close their doors, they were able to take advantage of certain government programs that allowed them to keep their folks whole. So those folks are in decent shape. But a lot of it also comes down to the supply chain of supplying those retail outlets as well, because they don't have the purchasing power of Walmart. They don't have the purchasing power of a gigantic chain. What they have is they're placing a small order, and they're hoping that order gets to them so that they're able to sell.
Right. One of the interesting things too is that you've talked about in the past, I think in June or whatever, that we should be shopping local, helping the local businesses. Yep. Have you seen that despite the pandemic, these, and I'm just going to call them mom and pop businesses, they've been they've just survived. They've sort of got over the hump a little bit.
Yes.
And they're okay.
Yes. I think they fall into two categories. The ones that were able to manage their cash well have survived, and they're doing okay. The ones who had challenges with managing their cash well, those doors are closed, and it's kind of sad to see, because these are hardworking people. These are not people who are going to work every day so that they can afford their second home in Florida. These are people who are going to work every day so that they can employ a few people and earn a living for themselves. It's a very different mindset, and maybe support the Little League team. One of the things that I'm thrilled about that we see on the South Coast, and it's something that, as you know, I lived in Arizona for a number of years, where there was a kind of rootlessness. People had come in from all over the place. One of the things that I've been very, very pleased to see here is a kind of loyalty that that I probably had thought maybe was gone. People here support small businesses. They continue to support their small businesses because they've always done it, and it's a matter of relationships. And we are a small enough place that those relationships continue, and people will continue to shop small. Now, a lot of those small companies have had to pivot. They've had to make some moves. Some of them have opened online stores. They've found ways. But the reality is, we also know that Amazon's here to stay.
Right.
Online shopping is here to stay, and we got trained pretty darn well. If we weren't online shoppers before the pandemic, we got trained pretty well to become online shoppers during the pandemic.
Right.
So that training is one that we're not going to be able to fight. But what we are going to be able to do is play on loyalty, play on the fact that when a dollar is spent in a small business in downtown New Bedford or downtown Fairhaven or anywhere, when that dollar is spent there, 80% of it stays local. And that's something that's really remarkable, because that's feeding families, and that's circulating, and that is multiplier effect, and it's wonderful on our economy.
As it was said by one of your predecessors years ago to me, many moons ago, there's nothing that you want in southeastern Mass that you can't find in the area.
My guess, I would
Pretty
be
much
willing-
anything you want.
I'd be willing to bet $100 that was Jim Mathis.
Yes. And you know, when you think
And he's
about
absolutely right.
yeah, when you think about it, I mean, you may have to go Fall River or Wareham or
Yeah.
Taunton, but you don't have to go too far.
You don't. And there is a loyalty here, and that loyalty, I think, is very important. It's going to help our small businesses. I kind of pity small businesses in big cities where there isn't necessarily that loyalty there, and you're seeing small businesses in Boston close at rates that are far, far greater than small businesses here. But we're used to dealing with the people we know. And that actually is kind of the joy of being part of the chamber. You're doing business with people you know.
Well, it's funny you were talking about with your own issue with the house. I mean, you can't find a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician or any of those professions. They are booked solid right now.
They are. And it's a challenge and they can't necessarily get all the parts and things that they need.
Right.
I had a deck built onto my house this summer, and it was wonderful to have that deck on the house, but it was supposed to have been finished in March. It got finished in August. Why? Because they couldn't get 2x12 by 20s.
Right.
It was impossible for them to get. They finally got them. They completed the deck. Thankfully, that general contractor is the one who's handling the water problem in my house, and he's got great connections with plumbers, electricians, but still finding the time for them to come. It's now been 2 months.
Let's talk from a consumer standpoint now.
Yes.
Because I know you, in the past couple of years, you've always given some folks advice as to what they can expect. I'm assuming, even though we're talking about staffing shortages and supply chain issues and what have you, there's still pent-up demand for people to buy right now. And as we get into Black Friday and Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday and all these things, people want to buy stuff.
There are two types of pent-up demand that are occurring simultaneously. And I think we're going to see part of it over Thanksgiving. There's a pent-up demand to travel. And there's a pent-up demand to spend and consume and to go to stores and to buy things. That pent-up demand is going to drive us through this holiday period. But the challenge, of course, is making sure that there are enough people to service them, that you can, if you're going to order something, that it's going to get there on time.
Right.
That the post office is able to handle it, because all of those challenges are competing with each other. So what we're going to see is that the holiday season is going to stretch a little bit in terms of final delivery from now probably through New Year's and beyond. But I think people don't want to spend.
The other thing, too, that's curious, and we've talked about it, too, is the length of the holiday season. Now, Christmas is on a Saturday this year.
Right.
New Year's is on a Saturday as well. And I know you've talked about it in the past that last weekend is always a big weekend.
It is.
But now you don't have that last weekend, really.
Right. Well, and the interesting part of it is that there have been enough news stories about shortages in this, that, or the other thing, that I don't think that last weekend is going to be as dramatic as it has been in the past. I think people are actually gearing up to do their shopping earlier, to get it done faster. It'll be busy. There's no question about that. And the fact that Christmas is on a Saturday, gee, I wish it were on a Sunday, because that Saturday would be huge.
Right.
But the reality is that even husbands who are traditionally late in buying gifts are probably out there now looking.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is the one thing I've seen is that people are saying, get out now. And a lot of businesses have started their holiday sales
right
before Thanksgiving now.
Oh, yeah. They've had to. And in fact, if you look at many of the stores, if you look at many of the chain stores, for example, like a Rite Aid or a Walgreens, we didn't get to Halloween before Christmas was up. Their stuff was already there, and they realized, I think, not only that they needed to extend the season in order to make their sales numbers, but they also realized that people's demand is such that they're going to start buying now, and I think we'll see a lot of that. We'll see more of it as we go forward. On December 4th, we've got the holiday stroll in downtown New Bedford. That is always a wonderful thing. Rumor has it Santa's going to be there. And so it should be a really good time for people to be able to shop in our local stores and to miss some of the Black Friday madness, but go out on December 4th for the holiday stroll as well as Small Business Saturday.
And the city is doing their traditional, they're doing the Christmas tree lighting on
Yes.
the 4th. They're also
Yes.
doing the Klasky Common Park,
Yes.
as my kids used to always call it, the
Yep.
Christmas park.
Right.
And walk through that. So those things are back this year after the Christmas tree was lit last year, but
But it was
wasn't-
very downplayed.
correct. So it's those things are sort of a return to normalcy, and those days usually bring people in from out of town.
They do. And it actually gives us an opportunity to really showcase our city. Because that lighting is a lot of fun. There's activities all through downtown on December 4th. That holiday stroll is really, it's a lot of fun and a great opportunity to go out and support those businesses. And I think all of them are geared up to be open and make sure that their sales are strong.
Do you think, though, do you see a lot of businesses extending hours too in the next few weeks?
Yes. I would expect that stores are going to be extending their hours through at least on the weekends, but probably on the weekdays as well. To try to capture as much of that market as they can, but they're stretched thin. They don't have as many employees as they once had, so it can be difficult for them to strike that balance.
We haven't. I'm curious because we kind of touched upon it, but the buying online versus buying in the store.
Yes.
Now, as you said, a lot of businesses locally have even started the buying online effect. I guess the difference, what from your standpoint, I guess buying locally is hugely important, but the difference between online or in the store, in your mind?
That difference is huge. You and I spent probably infinitely too much time on Zoom or Microsoft Teams over the course of the last 18 months.
The first time you came in here, as a matter of fact, I don't know, a couple Christmases before for the pandemic, you said, this is the first time I've been out.
Yeah, and seeing living human beings. But one of the things that happened on Zoom is you were making contact with people, but there was still this detachment.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing now is that willingness to go back to the stores is about people connecting with each other. And I think that's actually where our small businesses have a real strength. The online shopping, as we said, that's going to be there. And for a small business that is a brick and mortar business to also have an online presence is merely smart business.
Right.
But it will never replace the service, the relationship, the conversation, the for lack of a better term, the thrill of the purchase doesn't happen when you just click. The thrill of the purchase happens when you're in the store and somebody smiles at you and wishes you a happy holidays and gets that feeling of connectedness. We need that. We people need that. I don't need to Zoom for the rest of my life.
The other thing, too, I wanted to touch on, and it was a big thing last year because you and I talked actually a lot about it, was gift cards.
Yes.
And gift card sales are really through the roof right now.
They are. Gift card sales are astoundingly popular, and the single fastest growing segment of the retail economy are in gift cards. Why? There's a couple of reasons. It's easy. 2, you have the opportunity to give somebody something that you know that they'll want.
I was going to say, when you don't know what somebody wants, but you know, for example, they like food or they like
they love
clothes.
Italian food. Here's a gift card.
Correct. I mean, it is easy and it's still thoughtful.
Very much so, because you can put thought behind gift cards. And you'll see that more and more of even our small businesses are having their own gift card programs. For example, if I had to pick out a size for somebody, there's a pretty good chance I'd get it wrong.
Yes, exactly. Like most men.
Like most men. So it'd be a lot easier for me to purchase a gift card and let that person pick out the thing that they want. So I think actually it can become in some ways an even more thoughtful gift than the wrong gift.
Are businesses, do they like the gift cards?
I think so. Businesses like the gift cards for a couple of reasons. The dirty little secret behind gift cards is that about 7 or 8% of them are never redeemed.
Really?
Yeah. But the store that has sold the gift card has in fact managed to get the dollars for it, the dollar equivalent for it, right up front.
Sure. Yeah.
So they've gotten their money right up front, and there is often there's a redemption. It's sort of like lottery tickets. How many millions of dollars in lottery across the country are never collected?
Right.
It's the same thing that happens with gift cards. If I go to my drawer in my office, there's a pretty good chance there's about 10 gift cards in there that will never expire.
And they don't expire. I think
Yeah.
people are worried about
Right,
that. But
they're worried about
the
that.
state law
Yes.
passed a few years ago.
Exactly. They will never expire.
Right.
But there's a pretty good chance, well, some of them might not get used. And the company that issued it has my money, or has somebody's money.
So we got a couple minutes left, but so your advice to consumers as they head out early and toward the end.
Yes. My advice to consumers, both early and toward the end, is shop small and shop local. We want to keep those dollars in our economy, our local economy, as much as humanly possible. Our small businesses have suffered pretty mightily during this pandemic, and we're all sick of talking about it, but the fact remains is that those effects haven't completely gone away. The fabric of this city and any city and this entire region is those small businesses. We are not dependent upon the world headquarters of PepsiCo being here. We've got a bunch of wonderful small businesses that need our support. So if you're shopping early, hit those places first. See if there's something there that catches your eye that would make that fantastic gift. If you're shopping late, well, guess what? They're there, and you may not be able to get things delivered on time, but those stores are there and they're open.
And we didn't even touch on delivery, but it's important to, I guess, purchase early to get say you walk into store X here locally and you're trying to send it to California.
Yep. If you walk into store X now and you're trying to send it to California, my recommendation would be you better shop early, you better get it in the mail, and you better send it priority.
Even if you think it's early, right?
Even if you think it's early. Because the post office has been overwhelmed. They have already slowed down mail. They've done it because they have their own issues that they're dealing with, both in staffing and their ability to handle the volume. So I wouldn't depend upon next day shipping from anyone at this point.
Okay. That's good to know. And one last thing here with a minute to go. I mean, as we said, this holiday season, for businesses, it's going to go into January.
It is.
People are going to be redeeming those cards.
Yes, it is. In fact, it's going to go into January. It's even going to go into the spring.
Really, that late, you think?
You will, yes, because people will hold on to them and say, "Hey, I've got this card. I'm gonna head on over to that store and get something." So, I think what you find is that the trickle effect of that goes out pretty far, and that's good for the economy and it's good for us. I mean, it is interesting. We haven't touched on this, but the state's revenue numbers are incredibly strong.
Yes, they are.
Infinitely stronger than they ever expected. And that shows you that the relative strength of this economy is still there, even though the challenges we've highlighted are very much in evidence.
It's good seeing you.
Great to see you, my friend.
Wish you a happy holiday season, that's for sure.
Same to
we'll
you.
talk after the holiday season to see how things are going.
Fantastic. Thank you, my friend.
Rick Kidder from the One South Coast Chamber of Commerce, our guest. My thanks to him, and my thanks to you for watching. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network, and we'll talk to you again soon.